The NBA is actively investigating the LA Clippers for breaking the salary cap rules, and depending on what they find out, the Clippers could face a ton of consequences, including losing first-round draft picks, so this is obviously a massive deal for their franchise. Now, all of this is coming out due to reporting done by Pablo Torre, who does all kinds of investigative reporting, and what he found with the Clippers was they were reportedly finding ways to pay Kawhi Leonard outside of his NBA contract. The way they did this was a little bit convoluted, but essentially every single NBA team has team sponsors. They have a jersey patch, they have an arena name, they have the official something of the LA Clippers, for example. Every team has that, and the one connected to this story is a company called Aspiration, an environmental startup that Clippers owner Steve Ballmer invested $50 million into in 2021, and later that year it was announced that the Clippers and Aspiration paired up for a $300 million partnership that also included them becoming the jersey patch sponsor of the LA Clippers. And all of that is fine. The issue is, allegedly, in April of 2022, Kawhi Leonard signed a 4-year, $28 million endorsement deal with Aspiration, and that money was paid to him to do essentially nothing. A, quote, no-show job, end quote, was the way it was described in the reporting by these sources, and more concerningly from the NBA's perspective, this deal was allegedly put together as a way for the Clippers to go around the salary cap and pay Kawhi Leonard more money. Now, if this did actually happen, if the Clippers broke the salary cap rules to pay Kawhi, there could be some massive consequences. The best historical comparison for this would be the Joe Smith situation back in 1999, over 25 years ago. He signed with the Timberwolves on below market value deals for multiple seasons, and they did this for 3 straight years so that they would have his bird rights and then be able to give him a massive contract at the end. So a pay cut on the front end so that he could get a bigger deal on the back end. The problem was the owner and Smith had an agreement where the owner promised he would get this massive contract if he signed smaller deals in the beginning of his tenure with the team so they could put a better team around, at the time, franchise star Kevin Garnett. So the agreement between the owner and the player was the problem, and that was breaking the rules. They went around the salary cap in order to gain a competitive advantage. And obviously, by the NBA rules, that is illegal. So as a result, the contract was voided, the team was fined, and most importantly, they lost 5 straight years of first-round picks. Now, Adam Silver, the current commissioner in the NBA, and the late David Stern, the former commissioner of the NBA, are definitely not the same person when it comes to handing out punishment, but it does give at least a little bit of a historical precedent in terms of what the Clippers could expect consequences-wise if they are found, quote-unquote, guilty of breaking these rules. Now, we don't know yet to what extent the Clippers broke the rules, if at all, but we do have a Clippers sponsor signing a lucrative endorsement deal with the star of the team, but then if he never actually did anything to endorse the company, they were still going to pay him anyway. So this is definitely a weird situation. Now, one thing to understand here in terms of the kind of endorsement deal that Kawhi signed is that it's not completely unprecedented. It's not all that uncommon for players in the NBA to individually sign endorsement deals with team sponsors, and as the Kawhi contract reportedly states, that those endorsement deals would end should the player ever leave the team. That does happen, and it does allow the players to get paid more money, not by the team directly, but as a result of being on the team that the company sponsors. And just by itself, there's nothing wrong with that. Professional athletes sign endorsement deals all the time, and it would make sense that if you left the team that the company sponsors, that you would no longer be endorsing the company that sponsors a team that you're not even playing for anymore. The issue here would be, again, going back to the Joe Smith situation, if this deal and others like it were set up with the clear intent of paying a player to stay with the team and going around the salary cap to do it, which is the difference, at least so far, between this and the Joe Smith situation. With that, everything was within the team. He had an agreement with the team to go around the rules, whereas with the Clippers, there's this third party between the Clippers, Kawhi, and then this team sponsor company. But reportedly, and very interestingly to me, this is not the first time that this has come up in Kawhi's career. Going back to 2019, when Kawhi left the Raptors for the Clippers in free agency, the Raptors reportedly set up endorsement deals for Kawhi that would have earned him an extra $15 million in an effort to keep him in Toronto at the request of Leonard himself. And once he ended up leaving for the Clippers anyway, the owner of the Raptors went to the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver, and said, hey, there's something shady going on here. and the league didn't do anything about it. Which the fact that the owner of the team went to the commissioner and said, hey, there's something weird going on here, shows you that not only are these kinds of endorsement deals probably pretty common, but also in of themselves are probably not super against the rules. But it wasn't just the Raptors or the Clippers. They were not the only teams involved in terms of Kawhi's recruitment back in 2019 that he was potentially negotiating these extra benefits with, as the LA Lakers were also very involved at the time, and reportedly, Kawhi and his camp had a few demands on top of his max contract, including a house, a private plane, and once again, off the court endorsements. Now, reportedly, the Lakers refused to do some of these things because they were actually against the rules, but I think all of this paints a pretty clear picture that the rules in terms of how they aren't being broken are pretty unclear when it comes to these kinds of endorsement deals. And all of this reporting also illustrates that Kawhi came to expect these kinds of deals being added on to what his NBA contract already was so that he could get paid more than what the team was able to within the salary cap. Now, all of these as of right now are just allegations. Nothing has been proven. And in response to these allegations, the Clippers released a statement. And essentially they said that they didn't do anything wrong, and all this report did was further expose Aspiration as a fraudulent company, as they never met the requirements of their contract with the Clippers. Many of the higher ups were brought up on fraud charges, and they actually essentially scammed the Clippers during their partnership. All of which is public information. We have known about that, but what we don't know right now is what the intent of the Clippers signing Kawhi to this endorsement deal was, or I guess more accurately, the team sponsor signing Kawhi, and what kind of connection there was between the two. And perhaps more importantly, if this is against the rules, the way the Clippers did it, are there other teams around the league that are also doing this? And speaking of other teams, the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this story broke was a situation that we've seen recently. A very high profile player that publicly took a pay cut in order to help out the team with the salary cap and the second apron, and that player was Jalen Brunson. In the 2024 offseason, Brunson signed a new max extension with the New York Knicks, but he actually took a pay cut to do so. It was clear that he was a max player, and he was going to be a max player again in a year, and had he waited until the 2025 offseason, he could have gotten a much bigger deal, leaving tens of millions of dollars on the table. At the time, it was reported that Brunson was essentially doing the team a favor by taking a pay cut so they could more realistically sign other guys like Mikal Bridges to extensions without having a massive payroll and the roster restrictions that come with it, which is exactly what happened as Bridges signed his new deal in the 2025 offseason. All of which is related to the fact that the league has added rules over the last couple of seasons with this new CBA where you have the second apron now. Essentially, if you are spending a certain amount of money, there are roster restrictions put into place, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we have teams potentially trying to work outside of the salary cap as the league got more restrictive with these second apron rules and these roster penalties if you're spending a ton of money within your salary cap. And as it relates to the story with Kawhi and the Clippers, the Brunson situation is very interesting to me, because if you're going to give guys extra money as a way to work around the salary cap, you wouldn't do it the way that the Clippers did. When Kawhi signed his most recent extension with the team, it was already a max deal. They paid him as much as they possibly could have on his NBA contract, and then also reportedly set up this endorsement contract to give him more money off the court, at least allegedly. That does get Kawhi paid more and could technically be used as an incentive for him to stay with the team, but it doesn't actually help them with the salary cap because they already paid him the max. So if you're going to try and gain a competitive advantage by going around the salary cap rules, you wouldn't actually do it the way that the Clippers did it with Kawhi. It makes a lot more sense with the Brunson situation. You can pay him what his max would have been had he not taken a pay cut by combining his NBA contract with this off the court money, but you can keep his contract number down within the salary cap and payroll structure by having him take a pay cut, and that would be against the rules and give you a competitive advantage. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that's what happened with Brunson and the Knicks, but Torrey did say that he was going to be looking into that deal next, and it makes a lot more sense to me in that situation than it does with Kawhi. What the Kawhi situation looks like to me is sketchy for sure, but maybe not actually breaking the rules. Kawhi wanted to get paid more, the Clippers set it up, but it didn't actually help them with the salary cap, which means one of two things is probably going to happen. One, nothing. I'm sure if the Clippers did try and do something that they knew was going to be breaking the rules, they'd make it pretty difficult to prove. And just like when the Raptors complained in 2019, the league will look into it and do nothing. The second option would be the league restricting some of these off the court endorsement deals, and we just see less of this going forward. Think like when the league really attacked some of the tampering issues they were having with free agency, and then they started taking away second round picks, and really it hasn't been that much of an issue since. They're just making the rules and the consequences around this stuff much more clear for the future. And as we go forward with this situation, there's one thing I'm paying attention to. The number one thing I want to see is, do other teams around the league get upset about this? Do we see owners and GMs making statements about how this is wrong and they broke the rules? And because that hasn't happened yet, and if it doesn't happen in the future, that tells me one thing. What the Clippers did with Kawhi is much more common around the league than we think that it is, and no one wants to get in trouble for doing exactly what the Clippers have been doing. All of which creates a very weird situation that could have a massive impact on the league moving forward.